All right, cool. We are recording, Jim. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Toastmasters podcast. Today's guest is Jim Pohlig. Jim taught part-time at Wingate University and USC-Lancaster most of the years between 2012 and 2019. At Wingate, Jim taught in the Philosophy and Religion department. At Lancaster, he taught various courses in the statewide Philosophy and Religion course offerings. The Life and Letters of Paul and the Old Testament Prophets, and Introduction to Ethics. Before all of that, Jim worked overseas in 2 Bible translation projects, one in Nigeria, the other in Cameroon, which is West Africa. He also served in the Wycliffe Bible Translators as a liaison for Bible translation policy with the Vatican. Please welcome Jim. Okay, Jim, pleasure to have you on the Toastmasters podcast this morning.
Thank you.
I wanted to, as I was reading about what you had done your last, over the years and all these ventures you've been on in your professional career, one of the questions that actually came to mind, I was asking Aaron, I was like, hey, this is the introduction that Jim wrote me. Do you have anything that would be, an intriguing question for the audience? And as I spoke to him, I thought, oh, this would be really good. So how long have you been in Toastmasters?
Since the chartering of our club, which was 2014.
2014. Okay. So being that you were in Toastmasters, you joined Toastmasters slightly after you began a teaching career and you had that experience overseas. Do you think you would have done things differently or taught differently or spoke to the audience in a different way given the skills that you had learned from Toastmasters? If you want to take the microphone, you can.
Do you mean would I have spoken to audiences elsewhere in different ways given the skills that I had subsequently learned in Toastmasters?
Or using the skills that you've learned, would you have potentially delivered your messages in a different way? Or do you feel like the skills you learned would have been influential to how you were able to teach people overseas and to your educational career?
I would say it was probably both sides of your equation probably contributed to each other. What I've noticed in Toastmasters is that the mental work of making prepared speeches also gave me and has given me and continues to give me an unexpected edge in interpersonal communication. Makes me more confident, it makes my brain work faster, I would say. And I need all the speed I can get, my poor brain. But I do feel that the cognitive work, the brain work of making prepared speeches actually enhances the quality of my one-on-one communication. Yes. I did not look for that effect, but it happened.
Wow. Yeah. See, I was thinking about that, and I had a feeling that just a lot of your really ability to teach lessons and influence, whether it's the kids overseas, it takes so much of that is the education that got you there as well, besides the public speaking skills that could sort of enhance that, is kind of where I found that your answer led me to. One of the things that I was curious of, just based on what you told me then, spending some time overseas in a place like Nigeria or Cameroon, what was your biggest revelation as far as when it came to teaching? Like, did you just, like, being exposed to different cultures, did you come to a sort of a realization on how people learn or what teaching was and how it was exemplified overseas? Do you have anything to speak on that point?
Yes. With teaching, you always have to start with what a person knows before you can introduce something that is unknown to the student. You must always start with what a person knows or thinks he knows. What I found in living overseas in West African villages is that far more important than what, say, villagers know or think they know is the scope of how they relate to each other. And what I mean is, an overseas village, say a West African village, people make a lot more things that they consume themselves. They build their own houses, typically out of local materials. They make the roofs of their houses out of thatch or whatever. They will even make clothes out of what's available around them. They will certainly eat. 99% of what they eat is raised or cultivated in fields by themselves. Contrast that with what we find in developed nations like ourselves in our societies. I would ask my students at Wingate or at Lancaster, I would ask them, look at yourselves. Look at what you're wearing. Look at what's in your pockets or in your handbags. Take a mental look at your rooms and your homes. Is there anything that you wear or that you eat or that you own that you made yourself? One lady raised her hand and said, I knitted this scarf by myself. I wanted to ask her, okay, did you raise the sheep and shear the wool and make the dye and spin the wool into yarn and weave the yarn into cloth? Did you do that? I didn't. I didn't want to push my luck. That was the one positive answer I got in years of asking that question. And my point is, doesn't this immense contrast in the way that these societies, say, in West Africa live versus the way we live, doesn't that immense contrast produce an immense difference in how we view ourselves in the world? My own analysis is that we feel very detached from the world and therefore from each other. Whereas in West African villages, there is this wholesale embracing of everything around them. I don't want to speak in exaggerated terms, but in generally speaking. And that produces, in my estimation, an immense psychological difference between how we view ourselves and reality around us.
Yeah, I'm glad no one's asked me that question about it. Did you build or create anything that you're currently wearing or have on you? Because my answer is likely no. With that said, I went to a conference yesterday 2 days ago with ex-member of our club, John Mullen, who was a plumber, fourth-generation plumber, and now he kind of works in a more, I would say, corporate role, but still appreciates the plumbing that's going on behind the scenes. I mean, how many times have you walked into a building, unless you had sort of a background like this, where you're wondering, wow, like when you turn on the sink, that water pressure is really good, or this place has awesome AC that's circulating the whole building, or the structure is so well designed. You don't ask yourself those questions unless you are having your hands dirty. And I think it comes full circle on that point of we take a lot of stuff for granted in this country where we don't build it ourselves. We just kind of expect it. And that's an amazing revelation to have, having visited overseas, in my opinion, and seeing them and their culture at work. Let's see here. This is a question that I came up with when I was just, because I'm all about new technologies. I find it fascinating, and that's sort of my wheelhouse. It's like, what's the next new gadget? What's the next new iPhone? Oh, it has this cool port on it. That stuff is entertaining to me. Do you feel as though the emergence of new technologies, such as like the laptop in the classroom, has been more helpful or hurtful in the teaching setting for you? Delivering messages and what have you. You got it.
That's a difficult question to answer. The computerization has undoubtedly brought benefits to us. No one, I think, would deny that. But when I look at what Alan Bloom, the writer of the volume The Closing of the American Mind, wrote, and that book came out in 1987, I would say he wrote that before these things really became widely used. But now kids have them. And my guess is that these things, these cell phones, are not responsible for the rapid decline in educational quality, but they contribute to it. They contribute to it. Because young people mostly use these things to present themselves to other people. They do not use them for actually acquiring wholesome or sound information. And so I've thought to myself very often over these years, never was there a generation, never has there been a generation better connected but less informed. So let me give you an example. A college student may say, I spent 4 hours last night studying in the library. Now let's take that apart. What the student really means is, I got to the desk to the table in the library at 6 p.m. I opened my books, and then I answered some emails. And then, I had to take some Facebook chatting time. And then I met somebody in the lobby, and we talked a little bit, and then I felt like I had to have a cup of coffee, and spent 15 minutes there. Then I came back, and I read for 10 minutes, and then I got this most interesting Snapchat or Instagram from a friend of mine I had to answer, and so forth and so on, until 10 p.m. Well, how much studying actually got done? Very little. But this is the thing. This is the latest thing to blame, in my opinion. Also, I should say that over the last, 15 years, 20 years, email has drastically changed the relationship between student and professor. It used to be that a student, if wanted a conference with a professor, would have to make an appointment or catch the professor after class, otherwise make an appointment and come to the professor's office. Now professors get inundated, not only during the working day, but around the clock with emails from unhappy students. Dear Professor Pohlig, I'm quoting from memory. Dear Professor Pohlig, one student wrote, due to an unfortunate incident, I have to be in court this morning. Please forgive my absence from class. Or, Dear Professor Pohlig, I don't know how it happened, but once again my alarm clock failed to go off this morning. If you give me another chance, I swear to God it won't happen again. Or this one, Dear Professor Pohlig, it has come to my attention that this course is harder than I was led to believe it would be. I remember sitting there, Carson, staring at my computer screen at this message saying, well, now how am I supposed to answer this one? So email of which which is a function of this also, has really changed the student-professor dynamic.
Gotcha.
Also, people are up in arms about AI, artificial intelligence. Yes, students do use AI, GPT, what's it? ChatGPT, thank you, for writing essays. But even before that, there was all this problem of plagiarism. But I found that I could almost always spot plagiarism. If you have a student who's writing like a sixth grader, and all of a sudden in the next paragraph, he or she is writing like Ernest Hemingway, all you have to do is take a phrase from the Ernest Hemingway level of writing, search for it, and nine out of 10 times you'll find it. Plagiarism.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. That was you encompassed so many of the things that go on behind the scenes that we don't really pay attention to as students, but it does make sense as far as how 4 hours of studying isn't always 4 hours of studying, and I'm guilty of that for sure. But that is going to be the end of episode 1 of the Toastmasters podcast. So thank you all for listening. Jim, thank you for your time. And that is all.